Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all those who joined us from across the world. Let's just wait for a couple of more seconds. And I hope, Aman, Saurabh, you both are okay with that. We just wait for a couple of more seconds, and I don't want any of our attendees, any of our registrants to miss today's Inside session that we have for all of you today. So just leaving another few seconds, and then we'll soon start the session. In the meantime, I would like to thank all of you who joined us early in the morning, some of them late in the night. Thank you all for joining us in today's session. So once again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all those who joined us in today's session on why CX conversations still don't deliver outcomes and how AI and agents change the equation. Thank you all for once again joining us. Over the past 2 years, enterprises have invested heavily in omnichannel platforms, conversational AI, and agent-assist technologies. Conversations are faster, more automated, and more scalable than ever before. And yet, customers still don't get the outcomes that they actually seek. Tickets are closed, SLAs are met, ASTs improves, but objectives remain fragmented across systems, teams, and follow-ups. Today's session explores a critical shift happening in 2026, the move from conversational-led CX to outcome-led CX. We'll examine where modern CX architecture breaks at the point of execution and how AI and agents introduce a fundamental different model, one where conversation becomes more control points, more coordinated actions, not just endpoints. This is not a product discussion, it is an operating model discussion. I'm pleased to welcome Amandeep Singh, Associate Director and Principal Analyst at QKS Group. Along with him, we have Saurabh Raj, Principal Analyst at QKS Group. Together, they will unpack why outcome failures persist despite AI adoption and what CX leaders must redesign before scaling AI-led execution. We encourage all of you to share your questions in the Q&A section below, and we'll address all the questions towards the end of the session. With that, I hand it over to Amandeep. Over to you, Aman.
Thank you so much, Anish, and hello everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. I am Amandeep, your CX analyst here, and we have started this webinar series where we are addressing what are the problems that CX leaders actually face in AI execution of CX. So if you're attending our last webinar, we talked about the structural problem that actually comes in scaling AI for CX. That was about data problem. If you were not present, do check it out. It's available on demand. But in today's webinar, we have a unique agenda. Today, we're not going to do a Gen AI hype session, but we're going to go after a very specific problem that CX leaders are quite frustrated about. And we decided to talk about this problem actually after multiple interviews with CX leaders that are continuously working towards implementing AI into the ecosystem. And after these talks, we came to know that most organizations currently have increased conversations than ever, including chat, email, messaging, digital channels, voice bots or IVRs, everywhere. But the outcomes aren't improving at the same rate. So with the advent of Gen AI, the quality of conversations have improved, but not the outcomes. And when we say outcomes, we mean resolution, reduced effort, fewer repeated contacts, faster time to close, and ultimately retention and revenue impact. So the title that we have for this webinar is very intentional. We want to close the last mile and of turning a conversation into a completed action with agentic AI plus human empathy. So Anish, we can move to next slide. Yeah, thank you. So let me set the context for this slide because this explains why so many CX programs look successful on paper, but customers still feel stuck in the real world. The problem state here is what I call the CX outcome gap. And the simplest way to understand is this: a lot of customer experience today are great at driving conversations, but they actually struggle to drive a conclusion. So customers are getting information, steps, explanations, but they're not actually consistently getting the outcome they came for. And that's why the headline is conversation without conclusion. Because customers today are not contacting support because they want good interaction. They contact support because they want something completed, like a refund processed, maybe a billing dispute resolved, an appointment rescheduled. And what happens in many organizations is that the interaction platform performs well until the moment of action, and then it slows down or breaks because execution depends upon policies, approvals, identity checks, and multiple backend systems. And that's exactly what we mean in the blue box, is that the core issue. Today's interaction often stop at the point of action, leaving customers with guidance but no resolution. So the conversation feels productive, but customers still have to do extra work to finish the job, get done. And that's where the frustration keeps on building. Now, what I'm talking is not just a theory. We can clearly see it within the customer's intent. If you see on the right hand side, the first it says that 53% of consumers report feeling frustrated by the chatbot interactions. And it also says that 41% describe automated support experience as negative. And I want to clarify something that is important. These numbers don't mean customers automatically hate automation. They mean that consumers hate automation that actually does not complete the task. Because when automation becomes a detour instead of a solution, it actually increases the effort instead of just reducing it. So once you look at it through that lens, these symptoms that make up this will completely make sense. So if you see the first symptom, high escalation rates, and this is the classic failure pattern. Systems can understand intent and can handle basic dialogue, but when customer needs an action completed, the journey gets bumped to a human again. The customer then feels like maybe they are repeating themselves, and also feel like they are the digital channel wasted the time, because if escalation was inevitable, they could have just contacted a human agent in itself at the first place. That's what we hop onto the second one. Is the second symptom is channel hopping, where the customer starts in chat and then moves to voice or email because chat channel couldn't finish the job. Internally, we call this omni-channel, but customers don't experience it as omni-channel. They experience it as being pushed from one place to another, which is basically the system transferring work back to the customer. And the third system, which one is a tricky, which is ticket created versus ticket solved. So creating a ticket is not an outcome. Creating a ticket is a promise that something might happen later. So if I've seen some dashboard that celebrate ticket volume. What they are really measuring is activity and not resolutions. And I think that's how organizations end up thinking performance is improving, while actually customer satisfaction is flat or declining. Now, if you see at the bottom right section, this ties together everything, and this is where the outcome gap becomes measurable. And we call it by the resolution gap by complexity. For simpler tasks, we have always seen the success rate is high, as it's mentioned, 70% solved automatically. And that makes sense because tasks like order status, routine returns are structured, policy table, and they don't require complex expectations or multi-systems written actions. But when the issue becomes complex, the success rate collapses. For complex issues like billing disputes, entire end-to-end order management system, this actually slows system down, and we can see only 27% solved automatically. And that's the difference. 74 versus 27 is the real story behind the outcome gap, because it tells us the problem isn't conversation quality, the problem is execution capability. If I just support this with an example, normally a billing dispute, for example, isn't a Q&A. Billing dispute was never a Q&A problem. It was a workflow problem. You have to validate the charge, you need to check the policy, then verify identity, decide the action, execute the adjustment, and then again confirm the closure. If the systems can't complete this end-to-end loop, then the customers get stuck in the middle of the polite conversation that never produces a real outcome. So the takeaway from here is that state is very straightforward. The outcome gap happens when customer experiences systems are optimized for handling conversations, but they're not engineered for completing actions, especially when complexity, policy, and backend dependencies shows that it is not connected. And that gap is exactly we'll solve in the next part of the webinar, when we talk about how AI, automation, and agentic workflows change the equation from talking to finishing. Anish, we can take the next slide. Perfect. So on this slide, I want to make diagnosis look very simple and practical, because this is where most teams may waste time debating the wrong thing. When bots stall, it's usually not because the bots or the conversational systems can't understand the language. It's because the system cannot complete the work once the intent is understood. And that's why I've split this into two buckets, that is the technology limit on the left hand side and the experience plus organizational issue on the right, because you need both to be true for outcomes to improve. So let's start with the technology limits. Most traditional bots are still designed to be informational. They can explain steps, they can point you to a policy, they can tell you what to do, but they often actually can't do it for you. The moment the customer asks for something that requires execution, like reversing a charge, maybe changing a plan, upgrading something, issuing a refund, updating an address, or rescheduling an complex appointment, the bot hits the wall because it doesn't have the authority or the access required to act. And that's the first thing: informational, not actionable. Next is the weak context and memory. This is the main reason customers repeat themselves, because most systems struggle with multi-churn conversations and they lose details halfway. The interactions, because the customer gives the order number again, explains the issues again, confirms the identity again, and even if the bot is polite, repetition signals, one thing, I guess: this system isn't actually tracking a problem. This is what the customer has the intent, because the efforts are continuously rising instead of dropping. The third on the technology side is siloed system and integration gaps. I think this is the most common hard stop, because even if the bot is smart, if it doesn't have a clean integration into billing, CRM, order management systems, and policy engines, then it can't actually execute the final step. And this is what we mean by last mile. The conversation reaches the point where an action should happen, but systems can't write back into a system of record. So bot escalates it, creates a ticket, or send that customer to another channel. Now, if technology limits were the only issue, we could have solved this by just adding integration and access. But that's just half the diagnosis. If you see the right hand side, there are many problems that actually quietly also make it fail. That is experiences and organizational issues. So the first thing here is rigid and narrow thinking. Most conversational experiences are built like scripts. They work as the customer says on the expected part, but real customers don't behave like test cases. Yeah? They actually mix intents. They add constraints. They follow up. They also change their mind in the midway of the conversation. And when the design is too rigid, the customer hits the dead end again and again. And those movements were the system basically. Like I didn't get that, or it loops them back again to start. And the customer doesn't interpret that a small design flaw, they interpret it as incompetence. So it pulls you back again down. The next part is trust deficit. And this is not emotional fluff. This is operational reality, because when the issue is at high stakes, like billing disputes, fraud concerns, medical appointments, even related to my claims, customer actually hesitate to let a bot handle it, because they don't know if it will do the right thing, and they don't know, the main part is they don't know how to correct it if it does the wrong thing. So if customers don't trust the system with complex tasks, they will escalate early, even when automation is available, and that becomes a self-fulfilling limitation. The last one looks simple but drives everything that we just talked about. That is misaligned KPIs. If your primary KPI is deflection, you will design bots that avoid complexity and conversations, try to end conversations early, and push customers into tickets and hands off. You'll get great activity metrics, but you will actually not get outcomes. But if your KPI is actually, in terms of verified resolution, meaning the issue is completed, confirmed, and closed, then the design of your entire system changes completely. You start building for closure and not for containment. You invest in the workflow, you invest in escalation that is seamlessly, instead of just painful follow-ups that bot does. And you actually measure success by, did the customer problem end here, not did we reduce agent minutes. So if I summarize this diagnosis in one sentence, Most conversational AI programs don't fail because they don't understand. They actually fail because they cannot finish or complete a task. So, Anish, if you can move the slides. Yeah, thank you. So, the next, after the once we discuss about the outcome gap, we also need to talk about the consequences this gap comes out. And let me be very direct on these consequences, because unresolved conversations don't just create a bad moment in support; they actually create compounding cost across loyalty, operations, and revenue. Let's start with customer, because this is the fastest damage that can happen. That is erosion of loyalty. Even the data shows that a 30% churn risk, and the message is simple from this data, that one bad experience can deter roughly 30% of customers from returning. And this is not a CX metric in isolation, by the way. This is, I think this is a future revenue leakage, because when customer feels that the bot is blocking them, they don't just dislike the bot, they start questioning whether the brand will actually help them when it matters. And there is a lot of emotional shift as well, which is very subtle but very important, because customers can actually forgive automation when it reduces effort, but they actually get very frustrated when automation adds more repetition, or more tasks to back to them. And the next is operation, because this is the cost leaders consistently underestimate. This is kind of 2x effort problem, and the reason it is because of two times. It's not complicated. uh, it's basically rework. You pay for automation of interaction first, then you again pay when the issue escalates to human. But the second interaction is usually it's not clean continuation. The agent often has to rebuild context, verify details, and recover the customer's trust before solving the original problem. Which means the second interaction is frequently longer and more complex than it should have been. So if I can give a simple example of this, which makes this real. So maybe a customer tries to dispute a charge in chat. The bot collects the partial information, but actually cannot execute the adjustment. So it creates a ticket, and customer ends up calling anyway to an agent. In that call, the agent spends first few minutes regathering the same details: what happened, which transaction, uh, what the customers already tried, while the customer is continuously irritated as well. And now the agent is solving both the issues, the frustration and the issue that customer has. And I think that's where the AHT rises, because repeat rise, and agent also feels fatigue, because agents are not resolving problems, they are actually undoing the friction that is created in the earlier journey. And the next here is revenue, which is also very important, because this is the cost that actually hides in plain sight of lost opportunities. Every time the system says someone will follow up or ticket has been created, you're not just delaying any service, you're actually breaking momentum. And once momentum breaks, customer drop off, they abandon purchases, most of them cancel upgrades, or they stop trusting recommendation. The point is not that every support interaction is sales, but the unresolved service interactions quietly kill conversations and retention, especially in moments where the customer is already deciding whether to stay, upgrade, renew, or switch. So that journey gets disturbed. Now, if you see in the bottom section of this, it's getting more strategic, because it explains why so many organizations believe the things are moving while customers disagree. This is what we call the measurement illusion, because many organizations celebrate engagement, containment, or deflection rates, but those are activity metrics and not outcome metrics. A high volume of chat is not success if the customer leaves without a solution. And that's why the perception gaps here matters so much. 67% of business believe they deliver superior CX, but only 18% of customers agree. And this gap isn't because leaders don't care, it happened because organization is measuring the wrong thing, and therefore optimizing the wrong behaviors. If success is defined as reduce agent load, the system will get better at avoiding complexity. But if success is defined as verified solution, the system is forced to design for closure. And if you see the dead end effect that we have written on the right hand side, it's it actually connects to the previous two slides, that the complex issues are exactly where automation fails, and most of them that's exactly where friction spikes highest, because complexity requires not just conversation but execution, policy checks, identification, multi-system actions, and exceptional handling. So this is the curse of this slide. uh, Anish, can you move to the next slide? Yeah. We all know that we are seeing conversational AI, and it has become the mainstream in the CX now. But if conversational AI is everywhere, why are outcomes still not improving? So here in this slide, I want to use this evolution to explain a very simple thing, that why we scale conversations faster than we actually scale completion, right? It's a very interesting thing. So if you look at the first phase in the 2010s, this was the rule-based era. Basically, decision trees like if X, then Y. It worked well when the world was predictable and the customer requested inside a clean script like basic FAQ or simple policy question, because the system didn't need judgment, exceptions, or multi-step executions, because that was directly raised to humans. But the moment customer needs something nuanced like a policy edge, a case, a multi-step request, or anything emotional, that that actually breaks the flow, is not supported here. And then the next phase came, that is the in 2016, the NLP and intent recognition. And this was big upgrade, because now bots could understand natural language requests like track my order or reset my password, and they could operate across channels 24/7. This is the phase where automation started to feel intelligent, because it understood what customer meant and could route them properly. So this was, from my perspective, this was more an addition to the routing part of, of the CCAS expert. But this is also where a lot of organizations got confused with progress with resolution, because understanding intent is still the front half of the service. It doesn't automatically give you the ability to execute action safely across the systems, because you still need to write access, permissions, policy controls, and verification that the job is actually done. So phase two, in a nutshell, improve comprehension and routing, but the back half, closure, remains still fragile. Now we are in phase three, which is today, and this is where your numbers matters. 88% of companies use conversational AI, and this means big, because now this tells us that conversational AI isn't experimental anymore. It has become the standard first line of support. And once something becomes standard, the benchmark shifts. We no longer judge it by can it answer questions. We actually judge it by can it consistently resolve the issue without making the customer work harder. So that leads directly us to in what we call the stalling point, or you may say pilot syndrome. And the second number, it also captures it very perfectly. That is 73% of advanced bot projects haven't scaled. And I want to be very clear. This is not because teams didn't build enough intents or because the bot couldn't talk well. Most pilots look impressive in a controlled environment because they focus on easy, repeatable flows. The stall happens when the business asks the bot to do a real work, like handle complex action, manage exceptions, coordinate across messy systems, and still deliver a verified outcome. That's where orchestration becomes the bottleneck, because scaling requires more than language. It requires the operational design within the organization. A simple way to visualize is this pattern, that the pilot handles clean tasks like order status, basic returns, or maybe password resets, uh, and the metrics look strong. So leadership increase expectations. The next wave of use cases show up: billing disputes, account changes, refunds with complex systems, and suddenly the program slows down, escalation rise, and bots start generating tickets instead of resolutions. At that point, teams feel like they have hit the limit, but the limit isn't the intelligence; it's execution maturity, I feel. So the key insight here is that conversational AI has largely mastered answers, but it is still stalled at outcomes, because the real bottleneck isn't language. The bottleneck is orchestration that connects the reliable workflow system, integrations, governance, and measurable closure. And the simplest way to say is that we scale conversations faster then we scale completion, and that's exactly why customers still experience dead ends even when bots sound smart. So before we move to next, we have one poll to run. So if I can run that poll, we can just let me know if I can run that poll. Yeah. So I've started the poll. If you guys can just quickly respond to the poll, it would be great. It would be on the left-hand side. That's great. Data knowledge, quality, and too many exceptions. Measurement KPIs, we talked about it. That's fantastic. So the most of the point is again lies with measurement KPIs and still focus, and that's what we talked about it. I'm happy to see this, and if I just publish the results, and this looks great.
Yeah, and Amandeep also, I can see that people are vouching for data knowledge and quality factor, because in the era of AI, we are somewhere lagging the data redundancies and data complexities. And in this slide, when we talk about Gen AI, so I think in 2022, the revolution of main Gen AI came after OpenAI, right? And right now it feels like a solution to me. First, the adoption is, signals are real. You can see the numbers in the right side. So 79% of CX leaders reevaluated their strategy because of Gen AI.
Yeah.
And 93% plan to integrate widely over the next 2 years. And on the customer side, 63% of consumers already expect AI to change how they interact with brands. And it's like a common saying, right? You can see that numbers are on the higher side. So what we learn from here is that the shift is not theoretical. It's happening right now. Now, so here's the problem is, Gen AI dramatically improves the conversation layer. That's an important part of any data layer. So when you talk about tone, fluency, personalization, flexibility, but outcomes still stall if the system can't act. So that is why this line on the slide is so important. If you can notice that I have recorded your request, someone will follow up. So that sentence sounds human to me. It sounds responsive, it sounds intelligent, but operationally, nothing has changed. So the request has been captured, not resolved yet. The work has been deferred to another queue. The customer still waits. So Gen AI can make the experience sounds human, but if backend execution still ends in a handoff, the customer feels the same frustration, just delivered in more polished or beautified tone. So this is the core distinction we have followed here. So Gen AI upgrades how we talk. It does not automatically upgrade how we resolve, but resolution only improve when conversational intelligence is connected to workflows, enterprise tool, system of records, and verification. So without the connection, intelligence remains at the surface layer. But with the connections, it becomes operational. And that is exactly why the conversation must move from Gen AI alone to an agentic execution model. And that's exactly why the upcoming slide matters to you, because the next step isn't just Gen AI chat, the next step is agentic AI. Anish, can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So on the previous slide, we made an important observation that generative AI improves the quality of conversation. It drafts better responses. It understands your intent more accurately. It sounds more human. But even with all of that improvement, outcomes still stall. The customer still ends up waiting, switching channels, or manually completing a process. So the issue is not intelligence in conversation. The issue is execution. So that is why agentic AI comes in. So when we talk about agentic AI, we are talking about a system that does not stop at giving guidance. It moves towards a defined goal and takes action to achieve it. If I want to reiterate, in other words, it is outcome oriented rather than response oriented. So we have finalized 3 elements on the slide that explains how this actually works in the practice. The first is goal-driven autonomy. Instead of reacting step by step to user prompts, the system is given outcome such as processing a refund or rescheduling an appointment. From there, it determines the sequence of actions required. Now it's gonna plan for you, it's gonna execute, and it keeps moving until that goal is reached. The human defines the objective here. The system handles the steps within the defined boundaries. In the second element, it is orchestration and tools. This feels quite critical to me because without it, we are still in the world of smart conversation. Agentic systems are connected to APIs, workflows engines, automation layers, enterprise system, so they can trigger actions. Of course, they're going to update records, initial approvals, and complete transaction. So that creates a bridge between language and execution. So without orchestration, even the most advanced AI remain advisory-like. The third element is context decision making. The system does not act blindly. Considers custom history, eligibility rules, compliance requirements, and real-time signals before choosing the next step. So it is not simply automating a script. It's kind of making a bounded decisions within a policy and governance framework. The simplest way to contrast this through a behavior, let's say a traditional bot might say, please fill out form X to complete your request. But an agentic system would instead complete the form using the available data, trigger the required workflows, and respond with a confirmation that is task is done. So you can see the change here, right? So the shift we are describing is more talking about work to actually finishing a work. And that is shift matters because in enterprise environments, value is not created when the response sounds intelligent. Value is created when the outcome is completed, compliant, and confirmed. So this sets up a next part of discussion because once execution becomes embedded in the interaction layer, communications are no longer just a message. They become proof that the system has aced and the journey has progressed. Now let's compare that. What's this change in CX delivery? And it won't be just a buzzword, but as a practical difference in how service runs day to day. Okay. In this slide, we are going to level deeper to understand what functionality changed between traditional chatbot models and what we are calling agentic CX. Traditional chatbots were designed primarily to manage the interaction. They identify intent, they retrieve information, they generate response. In some cases, they create a ticket. And when the situation becomes complex, they escalate to a human agent. So the system is optimized around conversational handling. Success is often measured in containment rates. Did we keep the interaction within the bot? Did we avoid escalation? That model somewhere improves efficiency at the interaction layer only, but it does not guarantee resolution. That's why we have agentic CX. It's built differently. It is not centered on handling the conversation. It is somewhere centered on completing the outcome. The system is capable of taking actions across enterprise system. It can apply policy logic, it can manage exceptions, and most importantly, it can confirm closure back to the consumer. So the success metric shifts. It is no longer about containment. It becomes more about proof of completion or maybe resolution. So let me take this a tangible with a simple example. Imagine a customer says, my package is delayed and I changed my address yesterday. But when we talk from a traditional chatbot scenario, the bot might respond with a tracking link and say that address change required contact support. It may create a ticket for you in the background, but from the customer's perspective, nothing is resolved. It's still on that UI. They still need to call. They need to repeat the context, and they are dependent on manual intervention before the next delivery attempt. Now let's see as a agentic CX ecosystem. The system receives the same intent, but instead of stopping at information, it starts executing. It pulls the order status and carries the event. It checks whether rerouting is allowed based on internal policy and carrier constraints. It updates the delivery instruction in the relevant system. If possible, it can also confirm the reroute with the carrier. If not, it creates a priority exception workflows. But only after those steps are completed does it respond to the customer with confirmation that the address has been updated, and the next attempt will go to the new location. So what we have a drastic change we can see here that customer intent is identical in both cases, right? But what is the difference? It's outcome. So the shift here is not having a smarter conversation. It is about moving from answering and handling off to executing and confirming. Traditional bots are strong at providing information, but when you talk about agentic CX, it's designed for closure. So when we say about the enterprise environments, especially in regulated industries like banking, finance, healthcare, closure with it, traceability is what ultimately drives customer trust and operational efficiency. So traditional bots are good at information, but when we talk about agentic CX, it's about closure. That I want to quote right here. Can we go to the next slide, Anish? As Amandeep earlier mentioned, that real difference we are seeing in the outcome, right? So this slide goes one layer deeper and explains the engine behind the outcome. What actually make agentic CX reliable is not intelligence alone, but a disciplined operational loop that can be monitored and audited.
Anish, I think we are just one slide ahead. We need to move to the previous one.
I guess, yeah, I think shifting between, yeah, this is one. So, yeah, thank you, Anish. All right. So there are a couple of four understandings I want to reiterate here. So the number one will be, the first step is understanding. This goes beyond basic intent detection. It is about understanding the goal, the context, and the constraints. So what exactly does the customer want completed, under what condition, and with what level of risk? For example, when a customer says refund, that could mean a full refund, a partial refund, or a refund with a return, or refund triggered by a suspected fraud. Each of these paths has different financial and compliance implications. So understanding is about defining the precise objective within the right boundaries. The second step is decide. So once the goal is clear for us, because agentic AI did already all the initial pathways, the system determines the appropriate next action using policy rules, eligibility criteria, customer history, and real-time signals. So this is where many traditional bots fall short. They do not truly decide. They gather information and then route the case to human queue. But when you're talking about the agentic model perspective, decision logic is embedded and governed so that system can take bounded actions. That's why we have an act as a third step. This is definitely an inflection point. This is where the real CX comes into the picture. The system must be able to execute through connected tools such as APIs, workflow engines, and automation layers. What it needs the right permission and guardrails to update systems of record. Let's say triggering the transactions, initiating the processes. If it's not able to act in that way, then no matter how intelligent it sounds, it remains a conversational interface only, not an operational engine and not a real CX, what we am explaining right now. The fourth step will be confirm. And this is the stage many organizations overlook this aspect of the part. Initiating an action is not the same as completing it. Trust will definitely gonna break when customers are told that something is in progress, but later discover it did not finalize. We have seen this kind of statements, right? Confirmation means verifying the system of records actually being changed. Did the refund posted? Did the address update sync across system? Did the appointment slot get reserved and locked? These steps create accountability and auditability. And that's why with this, we create an ecosystem, we get a feedback mechanism, and we learn here. So the final step is learning. So over the time, the system is going to analyze successful resolutions, identifies where exception is occur, and refines in paths and guardrails. So this is not autonomous. It is structured learning within governance boundaries so that resolution rates improves while risk is contained. So what we are seeing here is that agentic CX is not just a magic, right? It is not just an advanced AI. It's a layer on the top. It is a disciplined loop of understanding. Decide, act, confirm, and learn. That loop is what converts a conversation into verified outcome and what the foundation for measurable improvements in resolution rates, customer trust, and operation efficiency. And that's why we have a next slide where we're going to talk about human in the loop. Can we go to the next slide, Anish? We're not going to leave humans, right? We're going to talk about humans too. The human need to be in this all ecosystem. So that's why augmentation. So Here's a smoother spoken version that carries authority and keeps the reasoning intact without sounding fragmented. Let me state this clearly because this is where many conversations about AI becomes very misleading. AI can execute steps, but humans protect the outcome. In real customer experience environments, the hardest part is not performing a task. The hardest part is choosing the right action when the situation is messy, emotional, or ambiguous. And that is why a human with their judgment plays a very critical role because they have that sympathy in them. They can have the empathy, sympathy, everything with them. These are the three areas where human remain essential, and each one directly impacts whether customer leaves satisfied or frustrated. The first is judgment in ambiguity. So policies are rarely as a binary system, which assumes exception occur, context matter, but the same request may require different handling depending on customer history, risk, exposure, or commercial value. AI will definitely want to analyze the patterns. It will propose a recommended action for you. But when there is a trade-off between goodwill credit and strict policy enforcement, uh, the judgment layer where human in the loop will definitely want to protect both revenue and the reputation. The second area is trust and emotional recovery. When a customer is angry, we know that, right? The customer is angry, anxious, or confused. The resolution is not purely operational. It is relational. It is somewhere you keep your sympathy angle playing around, right? So even if the workflow is completely correct, the experience can fail if the customer does not feel heard or reassured. And that is why future model is not about AI replacing people. In complex or emotionally charged cases, human empathy remains a differentiator, and that's a fact. So third area is accountability and governance, right? So when something goes wrong, organizations need clear ownership. Human provide oversight through explanation, management quality, assurance, and compliance review. They are responsible for ensuring that automated systems remain aligned with policy and regulatory standards. And this is why augmented consistency delivers stronger results than pure automation. In an agent augmentation model, AI performs what machines are good at, which is speed, retrieval, structure, decision logics, and process executions, all the technical jargons, right? But human focus on what they are uniquely good at, which is context judgment, empathy, and accountability. So the outcome is not simple or simply a faster interactions, right? It is more reliable resolution. You see higher consistency, fewer missteps, fewer repeated contracts, and stronger recovery when something falls outside the standard flow. So in more scale environments, this evolves into an agent supervision model where AI handles high volume standard cases and human manage exceptions, monitor quality, and refine guardrails. So they are not going to disappear. They become the reliability layer that ensures the system remains trusted. So the core takeaway from this slide is straightforward. The best customer experience does not come from AI alone. It comes from AI-driven execution combined with human judgment and empathy that combines, produces, and high-quality outcomes. Now, as we move to the next slide, we will look at specific use cases, and I will point out where human guidance appear in each flow, even when AI performing most of the execution behind the scenes. Thank you, Anish. So kinds of use cases where agentic AI is showing up across industries, and the pattern is consistent. No matter the industry, the use cases being triggered are not answer systems. They are like full action system, meaning the AI isn't responding to a request. It is executing an end-to-end workflow, pulling context, applying policy, trigger across systems, and confirming the completion. And that is why these examples matter. You can read all examples here, right? It's all in the operationals where human in the loop is very important. So the represent where conversational AI shifts from helping user navigate to actually completing the work. And with that, we have created the model where AI agents will definitely want to help you to create a CX, but humans going to manage those CX. Humans going to intervene when the CX fails. Human going to elevate that CX. And once CX is at the bound, you will see the best pair of AI and human.
Perfect.
Sandeep, over to you.
Yeah. So moving to next slide, Anish. Yeah. So thank you so much, Saurabh. So in the previous slides, we talked about where agentic AI, is being used. It's been applying about multiple systems, and it's not just assisting, but it's actually taking actions. Thank you for the wonderful example, Saurabh. But in this slide, I want to answer a very practical question that every CX leader asks next. How do we get back? How fast and what conditions decide whether it works in the real world, right? So that's what I want to talk about. So this is more about business value, and I want to frame it in a very simple way that when AI moves from actually being at the front door, cornerstone layer, to becoming an execution layer, the ROI shows up in three places, which is cost, uh, resolution capacity, and CSAT, that is customer satisfaction. Right? So the now let's start with the reduction in the support cost, because it's the fastest and most measurable, in most organizations, and an 18% reduction in support costs within 6 to 12 months. The key nuance is that this is not, as sort of said, magic automation savings. This comes from actually taking repetitive policy stable requests and pushing them to AI. So humans don't spend time on work that actually require more of repetitive. They spend more time of the work that actually requires judgment. However, this is very critical, and the cost reduction only becomes real when automation is designed to complete the task and not just deflect the customer into a ticket or a follow-up loop, because deflection without closure will usually return as rework to you. Second is autonomous resolution, and this is a capability shift, and because it's not going to happen by laying it a tool. It's actually being making an operational change, and this one tells you that whether you're actually building an outcome engine or just layering your AI on the top of the tools that you have. So we see that 32% of autonomous resolution by 2027, that's the prediction. This means that common service issues like that completed end-to-end human interventions, this is an important marker because it represents a change into entire operations of CX, because AI isn't just interpreting a request and routing it like it used to do earlier. It's now the expectations have increased, so it's actually expected to execute. It's expected to authenticate, apply policy, make the change, and then confirm the outcome. And this should be handled within the safety guardrails. And that distinction matters because resolution is what that drives both efficiency and customer trust. Now, if you look at a very important point at a CSAT on the right hand side, because this is where the value becomes visible to a customer, a 27 CSAT increase driven by zero wait times and instant outcomes. I want to make it very clear that customers don't reward automation as a concept. They actually reward lower effort and faster closure, because they have nothing to do with that what vendor is automating at the back end. They, for their perspective, lesser the efforts and faster closure is what they need. So when AI is actually finishing tasks in sessions, customers feel immediate relief. They'll wait less, the less repetition, fewer hands off, and CSAT will actually move. Right now, if you see the chart at the bottom and you connect these points to the broader direction of the travel where the CX is moving, the message is that organizations are moving rapidly from pilot to scale, actually expecting that AI to handle the majority of the volume. And that direction makes sense because once you prove the economics on the routine work, expansion becomes a capacity strategy, not an experiment. But the we want to be very clear that this has condition, because there's a difference between AI handling volume and AI delivering outcomes. So you need to focus on how your AI can deliver outcomes and not just handle volumes. That's why I want to also highlight the most important buyer signal on the slide, which is the consumer preference inside that is 74% consumers prefer a bot over a human agent if it means receiving immediate service. But notice that notice the condition written underneath, because this is the entire thesis of the webinar in one line. The preference is conditional on the bot actually resolving the issue and not making it rework. So just entire crux of the the entire webinar is that we need to move it towards a system that is resolving the issue and not just handling the volume. So customers are not saying that, to be very honest, that we love bots. They're saying we want speed with closure. And if the bot is fast but doesn't finish the job, it actually damages the trust faster than a slow human. Slow human that agents do, because it feels like companies optimize for efficiency rather than actually to help them with a particular problem. And that's why this stage, also the KPI matters is not containment. As adoption scales, the winning metrics becomes verified resolution. It will be time to resolution and repeat contact reduction, because containments can be handled very easily. But if that containment is handled and again escalated to an agent, we lost the battle there, because these measures like repeat contact reduction, time to resolution we measured, these will actually yield the a complete differentiator around you in the market. So a takeaway is very straightforward, that adoption curve will accelerate because customers reward speed, and ROI becomes measurable through cost reductions and higher autonomous resolution. But loyalty and CSAT only rise when speed comes with real confirmed resolution, right? Moving to the next slide. Thank you so much, Anish. So here are four non-negotiables on this slide and the insight behind each. So if you see, prioritize high volume intent, but only the ones you can close end to end. So most teams pick intents by volume, but the better rule is pick intents where you can deliver verified closure. If you automate what you can't complete, you are again scaling frustrations. And if you see, second is morely about redesign journey for outcomes and not conversations. So a strong agentic journey, as Saurabh mentioned about traditional, a strong agentic journey is actually built around a finished state, such as refund completed, appointment moved, confirmed, and it confirmed resolution. So the journey design must include the back half as well, like exception handling, approvals, confirmation, clean integration with the backend systems. With that, we come to the next, that integrations aren't an implementation detail, they are the product. Agentic AI without tools access is just smarter FAQ. The only value appears when AI can safely trigger action across CRM, billing order management systems, scheduling and policy systems with permission and control. We need to treat AI as a guest that comes to our door, welcome it properly, give him what is needed, and then he will do the task for you. Next is governance plus outcome metrics at scale. This is the biggest difference between pilot and production, because if you don't measure outcomes like verified resolutions, or maybe again, teams can actually drift back to easier metrics like containment and deflection again. And governance is what keep autonomy safe, because with guardrails, audit trials, human oversight on high risk decisions, this is one that will actually make you stand out in the market. So just covering this slide in one key takeaway is that agentic AI scales when you treat it like an operation system, designed for closure, integrated for actions, and governed for trust, and not like a conversational feature that we used to take care earlier. With that, I just come up to the next slide. So this is the last slide, but yeah, a very important slide, because we tell you the roadmap of how you can be there. So now let's stop debating about concepts, and I want to put a very clear operating target on the table, because if you don't define what good looks like, every conversational AI program becomes a collection of disconnected pilots. So if you see on the left hand side, we call it the North Star, and I want to be very clear about what it means. This is not about AI everywhere, and it's not about replace humans. The North Star is much more specific. So AI should autonomously resolve the majority of customer needs, while humans are preserved for high value moments where empathy, judgment, and relationship really matter. And customer experience should remain at the human level baseline. So the last part is that the point the most program miss currently is that anyone can push automation numbers by forcing containments, but when you do that, CSAT drops. you'll see that repeat contexts arise and you create the exact outcome gap we discussed in the entire webinar. So the slide is very intentional that pays two targets. Focus on 80% of auto resolution and 4.8 out of 5 CSAT score. This combination forces the right behavior, because if your AI cannot take action and confirm closure, you will never reach 80% of true resolution. And if your AI takes action without guardrails and oversight, you won't hold a 4.8 CSAT consistently. So that's the ultimate agenda. And so if I just move on the left hand side, there are some phases that we have discussed about what should be your action plan into next 12 to 18 months. So we have divided into 4 phases. So if I just talk about phase 1, from 0 to 3 months, it's about piloting agentic flows. And the goal is not to launch a flashy demo. The goal is simple here: to prove a closed loop in production. You choose high volume, low complex intents, things like refunds or scheduling, and you try to automate that. In phase 2, if you see that will go from after 3 months, this is where you expand your integration, and this is usually the biggest unlock. This is shift is that AI can read and recommend, so that AI can actually perform right actions into the system of records such as CRM, ERP, scheduling through API or RPA where needed, workflow automation. The next phase is from that will span after you achieve this base integration is about hardening your governance, because once AI can act, governance is no longer optional, because even a slighter deflection on governance can actually cost you much more than what you have planned. So this is where you establish guardrails for decision making, introduce human on the loop oversight, not to slow everything down, but to make that autonomy is safe and not just about that. And the phase 4 is about how you will is where you will scale and optimize, and this is the stage where organizations either break through or stall again. So scaling means rolling out across channels, continuously learning from successful human interactions, and most importantly, shifting KPIs from deflections to outcomes. The moment we have this, entire thing changes. So that's about that. So if I close this slide in one line, and this that agentic CX is more about a maturity journey, and you pilot for closure, integrate for action, govern for trust, and you will scale with the outcome KPIs in the go. That's from our side. Thank you so much, guys. If you have any questions, we can take that.
Yeah. Thank you, Amandeep, and thank you, Saurabh. Thank you for shedding your light on CX agents. The entire theme around conversation to actions was pretty insightful. I'm sure all the CX leaders who joined us in today's session, I can see people all the way from London, some from Singapore, some from the Asia Pacific, some from North America. So we have our audience across the globe. Thank you all for joining us. Some of you early in the morning, some of you late in the night. Definitely, this has been an insightful session, and I encourage all of you to raise your questions in the Q&A section below. In the meantime, we've already received a couple of questions, which I'll take up right now. The first question is nothing but what's the fastest way to move beyond pilots without blowing up the risk or CSAT? Who wants to take this up?
I guess somewhere I felt that this question will come up because of the percentage, Amandeep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think if I can take this question.
Please do.
Yeah. So there's no fastest way, to be honest. So the fastest way in my term is to stop thinking in terms of more intense, right? And start thinking in terms of end-to-end closures, like I mentioned, right? Stop being into the conversation layer, being in the CX, being the outcome layer. So we have seen that most pilots stall because the bot is good at understanding, right? But not built for completion. So the shift is pick 1-2 use cases where you can run the full block, decide, act, confirm, and learn. So this kind of system record needs a verification. So if I want to close in that, the KPI changes matter immediately. If you keep measuring containment, you'll keep building chat experience that avoid complexity. For me, you need to measure verified resolutions and time to resolutions and repeat those cycles again and again. And that is how you get to the North Star that we mentioned earlier, Mandeep mentioned earlier, and higher auto resolution without a CSAT penalty. I hope I answered it correctly.
So Paul, I believe you got your answer on your question that has been raised. So the next question we have from, I believe it's from Kevin. It says, how do we prevent hallucinations or wrong actions when AI is allowing to do things?
So I'll take that. The right answer to is this. This is a very great question, because I think the risk isn't about that AI say something wrong. The risk is more about if AI does something wrong. And the solution to is this, that to design an agentic AI like an operating system and not like a chat experience. So there are 4 actual controls that really matter. Is like tools that are grounded to action. So the AI should not keep on invent outcomes. It should take actions only through approved tools, like it may be APIs, workflows that are designed so that every step is traceable. So you need to be very traceable. The second, I think, is that permissioning plus policy constraints. So given the AI least privilege, it can read broadly, but the writing action should be scoped by role, customer segment, risk tier, and context. So for example, auto refund under X value, but under anything about certain $1,000, it's need approval. So we make this proper workflows, and then we train on this. I think we'll get that. The next is, I think, more about confirmation as a very hard requirement, because this is one of the important controls, because we don't treat like action triggered as success, because it requires a lot of system of record confirmations. So refund posted, appointment book, order updated. If confirmation fails, the AI must escalate or retry under a defined rule. So and the most important, I think, is that you have to keep human on the loop governance, because humans don't need to approve every action. They must monitor quality, sampling, because under this, if you want to reduce the hallucination, your agents needs to move from agents to become a manager that would manage AI to give the better resolution. So just covering, we reduce hallucination risk by moving AI generating answers to actually AI executes verified actions under control. So yeah, that's there.
Perfect. Thank you for answering that, Aman. And thank you both of you for your time today and sharing your insights on from conversations to actions. It's been a pretty insightful session. I'm sure all our CX leaders have found this insightful. And to all those questions that has been coming up, as we are running short of time, we'll definitely revert back to all those questions via mail. And at the same time, all those who couldn't join us in the initial phase of the presentation, or who wants to go ahead and then see the first webinar that we had, all the webinars are available on demand, and stay updated to all the upcoming webinars on our LinkedIn as well as on our website. With that, thank you all for joining us once again, and thank you to our expert speakers who were able to spare some time on today's session. Thank you all.
Pleasure is ours, Anish. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for joining, and let's be in touch.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day.